the more space you surrender to the state, because it doesn't affect you personally at that moment in time, the more authoritarian the government becomes. If people lose the right to be represented, then what are lawyers for? Are we just here for people who haven't committed crimes?
Right.
I mean, pedophiles, terrorists, murderers, rapists, they all have lawyers. War criminals have lawyers. Benjamin Netanyahu has got a legal team.
Right.
And he deserves a legal team. Everyone deserves a lawyer. It's the right to representation. If you take that away, then what is the difference between us and a police state? No, it's one thing you're coming from me, right? And then you're actually trying to scare my children.
Fahad Ansari has been a thorn on the side of the British state for the last 2 decades. Since qualifying as a lawyer, he has taken on cases that many would shy away from, specialising in immigration, asylum and national security law. As director of Riverway to the Sea, he has defended clients facing some of the most politically charged accusations in the UK, from deportation to counter-terrorism investigations. That work has now made him a target. In August of this year, returning from overseas, he was stopped and questioned under Schedule 7 counter-terrorism powers, an incident that underscored how lawyers who defend civil liberties can themselves become the focus of state harassment. He speaks exclusively to Middle East Eye on his experience as a solicitor in the UK and what it felt like to be on the receiving end of Britain's counter-terrorism laws. Fahad Ansari, thank you for agreeing to talk to Middle East Eye. Can you talk to us about what happened to you when you were travelling back to the UK in August?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, first of all. I think it's important to discuss these issues at length, primarily to talk about what's happened. The state wants to silence you. They want to intimidate you. They want to silence other people. I think by talking about these experiences, you empower people and you push back. So you gave me the opportunity to do so. I'm really grateful. Last August, a month ago, I was coming back from holiday from Ireland with my wife and kids. And we come by Holyhead. And we came to the immigration booth, and suddenly 4 officers jumped out and flagged down my car. They said it was a normal security check. What transpired was it wasn't a security check, it was like political intimidation. So they asked me to hand them a passport, they asked me what I do, they gave me the Schedule 7 landing card. So I completed that, I wrote down I'm a solicitor, I thought that would be the end of the matter. The officer disappeared into his little office, came back out with another officer who said, Mr. Ansari, you need to come in for some questioning. So all of a sudden, my children had to watch their father being escorted away by police officers to engage in a conversation where I was compelled to participate. I had no choice in the matter.
But before you continue, could you tell our viewers what a Schedule 7 stop is?
So Schedule 7 is a power that came in with the Terrorism Act 2000. And what it allows is for police officers at any border or port to the UK to stop and detain and question any individual without suspicion, and that's quite critical here, without suspicion of any wrongdoing, to ascertain whether they're involved in terrorism. Now, there's 2 ways that the power is used. One is in a profiling manner, where they just stop people that they look like terrorists, to use the phrase. So generally Muslims get stopped a lot under this power. And then there's targeted stops where they're actually interested in questioning an individual who they may not have reasonable suspicion to arrest, but they want to actually question without that. And my case fell into the latter category. And I know that because as soon as I entered the little booth with this sort of theatre that they were doing in front of my kids, they said, we're detaining you under Schedule 7. And normally what they have to do is ask a few questions to examine you to check whether they should detain for further questioning. And the officer said, no, we're going straight into detention. Later I saw that one of the officers, the one who stopped the car, he had my car reg written on his hand. So again, that was another indication. And then at one point I actually put it to the officer, like, is this profiling? And he said, no, we stopped you for a specific reason. Which he wouldn't specify to me.
Right.
So, so that's, going back to what happened was I got taken into this room. I was detained, as I said. And then, immediately they started asking about my phone. Now, I didn't have my phone on my person, it was in the car. So the officer disappears outside to try to get the phone. He asks my wife, and my wife handed it over. They come back in very pleased with themselves. They got my phone in a little bag. And, then I immediately say, look, that's privileged information. That is my work phone. I'm a solicitor, as you're well aware, and you cannot access the contents of that phone. And so the officer says, well, is it just a work phone? Is it personal as well? So I said, it's 98% work. You'll find some stuff like family pictures and, some personal issues like this, but generally it's a work phone. All my client data, communications, emails, logs, case files, everything's on that.
Yeah.
So he said, oh, well, we've got a procedure in place where we'll get a barrister to look at it first of all, and they'll decide what's privileged or not. So we had this back and forth around saying, well, how does the barrister know? They don't know who my clients are. They don't know what my cases are about. They don't know what to look for. They don't know. I mean, it could be someone's passport on there. They don't know if it's a family member. Is it a client? So I then said, look, I specialize in national security cases. There's going to be material on that you are obviously going to look at and not automatically think that that's going to be related to my cases. They said, well, there's a procedure in place. We'll get a barrister to do it. So the bulk of this initial hour was spent having this conversation. I then got my solicitor involved. And again, we had the conversation. And they sort of said, you have to. I said, can you give an undertaking that you will not download the material and you won't access it or share it with anybody else, including the security services?
Yeah.
They refused to do so.
Okay.
They said, we'll download it, but we're not going to show it to anybody until the barrister looks at it.
Yeah.
And then we went back into that same conversation. So ultimately, they took the phone, they downloaded it, they refused to listen to my protestations about privilege, and then they began their questioning. I assumed at the point where they've got my phone and that's what they really wanted, that there would be no need for questioning, but they wanted to ask some questions to establish whether I'm involved in terrorism. Yeah. And so naturally, they first asked what degree I did at university.
Yeah.
They asked me about my A levels.
Right.
Again, that's how does this correlate what I did 25 years plus in school with terrorism today? Asked me about my hobbies, what books I like to read.
Yeah.
They asked me which mosque I attend.
And what did you say about your hobbies?
I said I had to be careful because any answer you give obviously leads to more questions. And so you have to think like a police officer. If I say I like mountaineering, oh, that's jihad training. Right. I said I like to play chess, strategic. I like to read. And he then said, what kind of books? So I told him truthfully, I like romance books. That changed that line of questioning after that.
Yeah.
He then asked me about my mosque attendance. This was quite bizarre, like which mosque I attend. So I rolled off every mosque I could think I prayed off in the last month, which is about, 17 or 18. He wrote them all down. Wow. Then he asked me how many times I attend mosque a day. I said it varies. It could be once, could be twice, could be three. I like to say 5, but it's not. He said, well, can you not give me an average? Can you? Yeah. And so he's very fixated on this point. This was bizarre to establish if I'm involved in terrorism, is how often I go to a mosque. Yeah, he left the room. He comes back in. So he would do this sporadically, leave the room after every section of questioning.
Yeah.
To me, it seemed like someone was feeding him the questions, and he'd come back in with some more. So then he comes in and he asks me about Palestine. Yeah. So what do I think is happening in Gaza? What's Israel's end game? Do I have an opinion on it? Do I attend protests?
Yeah.
Which protests? How often? Yeah. Who do I go there with?
Yeah.
Again, last time I checked, protesting was a legal right in this country. Doesn't establish you're involved in terrorism.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there'd be quite a lot of people they'd have to interview.
Right. Yeah.
Then he asked me about boycotting, which products I boycott.
Oh, wow.
Again, very, very strange.
Yeah.
He got particularly interested in my kids, asked me what age my children were.
Yeah.
And this is where I feel that there's two elements of this experience. One was the element of data grabbing, trying to grab the communications with my clients. And the second one was harassment.
Right.
Because asking me about the ages of my children, there's no reason to do that. Yeah. And then to say, well, we've got their passports. So, because I hesitated to answer that. Yeah. And he said, well, we have their passports, so we can check there.
Okay.
And then there's an incident that happened after I'm released where so this was the next day, sorry to jump a bit, but the next day I'm traveling. I don't have my phone, they've taken it. And my daughter received a notification on her phone that a parent is trying to manage your contacts. And this is Apple's internal parental controls. Yeah. So it's just me and my daughter on that group. And so it allows me to access her phone. Now, I don't even access her phone. It's just there as a measure if I need to.
Yeah.
And suddenly somebody else with my phone is trying to manage her contacts.
Wow.
So she's quite spooked by the whole thing. And she's worried, are they checking my photographs? Are they going to look at my messages? Yeah. And she's quite, disturbed.
And how did that make you feel?
Well, I mean, it's one thing you're coming from me, right? And then you're actually trying to scare my children. So already they've seen their father, taken in by the police officers, not knowing when he's going to be released. It's not like we're adults, we're in the field, we're in the game, we understand the procedure. For children, they don't see that. They just see daddy's been taken in by police officers. They've taken his phone. They're accusing him of being involved in terrorism. And then the next day to get like your daughter being essentially what looks like a police officer trying to access her phone. So yeah, it made me very angry more than anything else. I'm very upset at this. But I understand the game. I understand this is how the state seeks to intimidate you.
Yeah.
And it adds extra pressure that our family now going to be saying, well, why are you doing these cases? It's now impacting our family. So in the wake of running the Hamas application back in April, we were subjected to hundreds of death threats, right? Abusive calls. I had to get cameras installed around my house. We had to get police measures in. We had to do all of this stuff already. So now that's to protect you from society and idiots, with too much time in their hands. So you go to the police to protect you from that. So now what the kids are seeing is that even the police who are there to protect us are now harassing us.
Yeah.
So it's not great marketing for the police.
And everything else. Is this something that you've been taking on national security immigration cases for nearly 2 decades now. And one question I have for you was, something like this stop, was this something that you anticipated happening when going overseas?
As Muslims, when we travel, we're all very familiar with Schedule 7. I did a podcast a few days ago with Crispin Flintoff, and he was completely unaware of Schedule 7.
Right.
That it even existed, this power to take phone and question you.
Yeah.
Ordinary Muslims are fully aware of it because tens and thousands of us get stopped every year flying. So it's always anticipated that you will get stopped or your phone will be seized. Usually, I have measures in place when I travel. I will wipe my phone or I will have a travel phone. That's normally I do when I fly in. On this occasion, I hadn't done that. I was with my family. And again, it was this sort of deliberate theatrics taking me in front of my family.
Yeah.
It's never happened when I've flown into Heathrow on my own, ever.
Wow.
But it happened on this occasion I was with my family.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because I did anticipate pushback. You can't take on the state that's involved in repression, both domestically and internationally, and not expect some sort of pushback. I felt that my position as a solicitor would be sort of insulate me from that attack to a certain degree, and that there'd be some respect to an officer of the court.
Yeah.
We didn't have that. We were treated like enemies of the state.
Yeah.
So I'm like, the moment I'm taken into that room, I cease to be a solicitor as far as the state is concerned at that point. So anything I'm saying is irrelevant. Now, you might well say, and listeners might say, well, why should you being a solicitor protect you from something everybody else is subject to? And that's fine. So if it's a case where I'm stopped and they're interrogating me, and in the process of that, it comes out I'm a solicitor, I understand that. But here it's targeted at me because I'm a solicitor. It's not incidental to it. It's central to it. If I wasn't a solicitor representing national security clients, I do not believe I would have been treated the way I was when I stopped that time. I don't believe I would have been detained.
Yeah.
And specifically to take my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, the questions, we didn't go through them. They asked me questions about Palestine action.
Yeah. Could you talk a bit about what questions they asked?
So once they finished this sort of section about what I did in Palestine, what I did for Palestine, let's say.
Yeah.
They then disappeared. He comes back and he starts asking me about Palestine Action.
Yeah. Which has been banned.
Which is a banned terrorist group, according to the government. So he asks me, do I know its members? Do I associate with them? Do I socialize with them? Have I attended their meetings?
Wow.
Do I know of any planned actions? And at the time, there was an action planned for Defend Our Juries were planning an action in support of Palestine
This
Action.
is the event where more than 1,000 people got arrested in
This one was 500, I think, in
500,
August.
right?
So that was coming up at the weekend. So I said, look, I read in The Guardian that there's this event happening. Or, do you know any other meetings, any other like action that's not in the public domain? I said, no. I mean, why would you assume I do? What do you think of them being banned? This was bizarre. They said, what do you think of the ban? So, look, I'm not stupid. There's Section 12(1)(a) of the Terrorism Act.
Yeah.
It makes it an offence to express a belief and opinion that is supportive or deemed to be supportive of a banned terrorist group.
Yeah.
Now, we've seen thousands of people getting arrested for holding up these placards.
Yeah.
Now you're going to ask me,
I can't say my support.
I support Palestine action.
Yeah.
Now you're going to ask me, and these thousands of people are elderly people, disabled people, peaceful protesters.
Yeah.
Now I'm sitting there being investigated by counter-terrorism officers and being questioned by they invest me for terrorism, and you're going to ask me what I think of a banned terrorist group being banned.
Were you not tempted to give your legal scholarly opinion, or?
Had I been on my own and my family not being waiting outside, I probably would have given them a bit more time and engaged in a discussion.
Yeah.
Because of the circumstances, I just wanted to get out of the room quickly. So I told him I had no opinion on the matter. And he sort of chuckled at that and said he finds it hard to believe that I have no opinion. And I don't know what he's implying by that. But yeah, I had no opinion on the matter. It may very well be that I had an opinion before I got into that room, and I might have an opinion when I left. But at that moment, I had no opinion. And he says, oh, my wife finds the whole thing bizarre. I said, good for your wife. I mean, perhaps you should arrest her. But the point is that I have the privilege of understanding the law, knowing the boundaries, and understanding the nature of these questions.
Yeah.
What went through my mind is the amount of people who are sitting in that room and they don't have that privilege. And they're asked these questions and they honestly answer them. Yeah. And don't even realize that they may be, verging on the edge of committing.
Did it feel weird being on the other side of the kind of conversation, because you've represented clients who've been stopped by Schedule 7 over the years, some high profile, some individuals who just happen to get caught up in the system. Did it feel weird for you to be on the other side of that equation?
Yeah, absolutely. So it went from being this sort of academic understanding of the legal situation to having a very personal, vested experience in it. So as soon as I came out and got home, one of the first things I did was I made a lot of pointers about advice I would give a client in those circumstances, because I didn't pick up on some of the nuances that you would when you actually go through the experience in terms of the questions, in terms of just understanding the makeup of the room.
Could you give some of the pointers that you've since reflected on?
So some are I'd rather not, actually. Okay. I'd rather not on there, but I would give them to clients. If you ever get picked up,
I'll bear that in mind.
But the point being is that it just becomes a personal experience. You suddenly, you're not an officer of the court. You're a suspect, sitting there and being interrogated. Yeah. I suddenly have to have a solicitor on the phone. So I'm calling my solicitor and she's advising me about, my rights and what to do. Right. They're reading out material to me, which I understand, I know, but suddenly takes on a different meaning. Yeah. And one thing I think that, one piece of advice you should do is there's a code of practice that they have to follow. Yeah. And I think everybody who goes in that room should actually ask to see that code of practice. Right. Read it. Right. It's quite a lengthy document. Understand it. Yeah. Because that dictates what they can and cannot do. Okay. They've got this one-page sort of pro forma they read out, but the code of practice is the detail that you need to know about what they can and cannot do. Yeah. So, for example, one of the things they did with me was they fingerprinted me. They took my DNA swabs, photographed me.
And are they allowed to do that?
They're allowed to do that to establish your identity if there's doubt about it. Okay. They knew who I was. It was targeted. Yeah. I'm a public profile person. They have my passport. There's no doubt about my identity. This was just gratuitous. There's no need for it. It was unlawful. Is what we're arguing in court. And again, when you read the code of practice, and again, it's alarming because I know this. Yeah. But when you're in the situation and you're sort of suddenly feeling what your clients go through, it's almost a feeling of powerlessness. Of course, as a solicitor who deals with it, you got a slight degree above, but at the same time, you're still facing the violence of the British state as they're interrogating you, because there's no pretenses anymore. This is what we think of you. Yeah. We don't believe you're a solicitor, a bona fide solicitor. We believe you're a terrorist. That's why we're sitting here having this conversation with you. and the pretenses are not there anymore. It's all dropped.
Right.
It's very barefaced.
Yeah.
So yeah, you suddenly feel that sense of isolation, powerlessness.
Did you feel quite exposed at this point?
To an extent. I mean, it was one thing, like as a Muslim of fewer believers, we have a sort of a standard operating procedure when these things happen. When you're tested, you're meant to remember Allah. So the first thing you do is you say Alhamdulillah. You say this, you pick this up from the people in Gaza, where everything they're going through, Alhamdulillah. So the first thing you praise Allah, you ask Allah for give you steadfastness to withstand whatever they're going to do to you, for your family, and just, don't show weakness to them. That's one thing I definitely would advise everybody, because they want to impose their power and their violence upon you.
Right.
And what you have to do is withstand that. The reason that you're being targeted, the reason that you're trying to be silenced is because what you're doing is effective. Your voice is your power in this society. And if they're trying to silence it, that means that you are doing something that is impacting them.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about, so obviously you went through this ordeal, especially with your family, that I can imagine it must have been quite concerning for you and your family and your kids. You're now challenging, I believe, the police on this?
The police and the Home Secretary.
And the Home Secretary as well. And what's motivating you to pursue this challenge? And what exactly are you challenging?
So the primary reason I'm challenging this is in order to protect my client's data, first and foremost. So our understanding is that it's been downloaded, but it hasn't been accessed yet.
Okay.
The police,
downloaded by the police.
Downloaded by the police. The police have stated in the papers presented to the court that they have not accessed it, they've not shared it with anybody, not examined it. The barrister they've instructed to look at it, to do that sifting, to decide what's privilege and what's not, that useless exercise, that's going to happen next week. So they've said that on the 6th or 7th of October, that's going to begin. So we have an interim relief hearing on Friday, which means that we want to get some sort of order from the court that until the case concludes, that no one's allowed access to this material.
Yeah.
Because the prejudice to me and my clients is severe.
Right.
For example, if we go on to win the case, the damage is already done if that's been shared and examined.
Okay.
So we want the court to say, look, until the case concludes, check whether the detention and the seizure was lawful or not.
Yeah.
Nobody should be looking at the phone.
Okay.
So that hearing's happening this Friday to determine.
Friday, October the 4th.
The 3rd, I think. Third,
right.
Yeah, to determine this. So that's happening this week. That's number one. For me, I have an obligation. Clients give me their information on trust. Secondly, we don't want a precedent established where it's me today, but as we're fully aware, once a precedent is established and the police realize that they can get away with targeting a specific person or a specific community, they can use it against other people.
Yeah.
People have been afraid to speak out for prescribed groups who are seen in other parts of the world as resistance movements,
right,
like Hamas, like Hezbollah.
Yeah.
People have been afraid to, for example, to hold up a placard saying, I oppose genocide, I support Hamas.
Right.
No one's willing to get arrested for that.
Right.
But because people allowed this to happen, you now have protest groups like Palestine Action being banned.
Right.
And now people are realizing that, well, we can't even say we support Palestine Action.
Right.
And question arises, is there a difference between I support Palestine Action and saying I support Hamas?
Right.
Should there be a difference?
Right.
It's up to debate, but we can't even have those debates without risking getting arrested. So the more space you surrender to the state, because it doesn't affect you personally at that moment in time, then the more authoritarian the government becomes. Had we pushed back as a society, not as a community, because the Muslim community have been always on the back foot and always pushing against these laws. The whole war on terror. Schedule 7 is not a new power. It came in 2020. 2000. Banned organizations, again, came in 2000. All of this stuff has been on the books for years. And our community have had people arrested for terrorism, for writing poetry, for downloading, material, books, reading books, selling books. Stuff that, had it happened to the wider society, they'd been far more outraged about it. But it hasn't. But now once it's established in the books, those same powers that are being rolled out and used against the wider British society.
Right.
And sort of white British society suddenly waking up saying, when did this happen?
Right.
So when people ask me, do you think we're on what's happened to Britain? We're turning into a fascist state. No, it's always been like that. It's just being used more wider now than it was previously.
Yeah.
So it's very important, like why we're bringing this challenge is to push back, halt the state's juggernaut, trying to basically take over all our civil liberties. And also I want, I'm not unique. I'm unique in that I'm a solicitor who's targeted in this way.
Yeah.
But in terms of being an individual who is detained under Schedule 7, partly because I'm a Muslim, I'm not unique. I have a platform from which I can actually bring this challenge, but I'm standing on a mountain of silent victims of this power. People who are every day stopped, who don't have the contacts, the privilege, the power to actually bring these challenges. So one of the grounds that we're bringing is that the way mobile phones are today, smartphones, they are like, you will find more information about an individual on their device than you will if you raid their house and search every room in it. So to do the latter, you need to have reasonable suspicion.
Yeah.
But how can it possibly be lawful then at a border where you have no suspicion of wrongdoing? You can take someone's phone and have such an intrusive look into their life,
right?
Where they've gone, who their family members are, looking at their Uber receipts, their travel, Google Maps. If you think about your phone, Areeb, think about all the apps, and imagine you were to take all that data, plug it into AI, and what kind of profile you could bring up about who you are, who you're connected to. Especially you're a journalist. It's just as dangerous for people like you as it is for people like me. And imagine someone was to say to you, "Oh, Areeb, we can sift through your phone and we'll be able to know who your contacts are with your privileged material and who you're actually the bad guys you hang out with."
Right.
I mean, you're a journalist. You must speak to all sorts of people.
Can't possibly comment on that. But no, I think that's really interesting, and I think this kind of nicely fits into the next kind of questions I had for you. So, over the past year, especially since the genocide in Gaza began, how has the nature of your caseload changed?
So I'm primarily, I work in the field of immigration, asylum, deport. I have a crossover with national security, so this deprivation of citizenship, terrorism, deportations.
Yeah.
My caseload until this point has generally been, even the national security stuff, has all been about stuff that you might properly, quote unquote, identify as political violence, right, or terrorism. People who've been involved with Al-Qaeda or accused of being involved with Al-Qaeda, ISIS, different groups around the world. Now the shift has been to people who were involved with sharing documents, posting on social media stuff in support of Palestine or resistance groups in the region. And suddenly the prism of what's national security is very different.
Right.
The terrorists, the terrorist suspects, the ones that I'm dealing with now, are a completely different kettle of fish from what I'm used to.
Right.
You look at them and they're just completely ordinary people.
Yeah.
They haven't traveled anywhere.
Yeah.
They haven't fit that profile that you've seen for like the last 20 years.
Yeah.
They're just students. They're professionals.
Right.
They're people who are being dragged before their regulators because they posted in support of Palestine.
Right.
Not even going into supporting about political violence, but generally attacking the word genocide.
Yeah.
They have people who questioned Zionist propaganda, and they've been reported to the regulators. The regulators are not filtering through these complaints and are investigating them.
Yeah.
So I've suddenly started doing a lot more regulatory work, employment issues.
Yeah.
It has changed. Even the cases of people who've had their visas cancelled, it's now for stuff like sharing, documents or downloading a document or posting on Twitter. Again, it's not the kind of stuff where I've traditionally been used to. Okay. He's accused of being aligned to a group aligned to ISIS.
Yeah.
He posted on Twitter. It is very different.
Right. Okay.
But they're both being treated in an identical fashion as threats to national security.
Yeah.
So that word national security is just lost on meaning.
Yeah. You've taken on a variety of clients over the years, and I think you kind of made headlines recently when you decided to represent Hamas. Now, for the record, you've mentioned explicitly that you've received no funding or any form of monetary payment from Hamas, because that is technically illegal given their status as terrorist organization here in the UK. I think my question, many viewers would be very curious to hear, like, what gives you that kind of like courage, as it were, or that the kind of like audaciousness to take on a client like Hamas,
So,
for example?
yeah, so I don't see it as something courageous personally to do this. The people who have courage are the people who are in Gaza. That's courage. Everybody else falls completely short of the word. I don't think anybody has courage, except those people right now. Well, I see it as, I actually didn't see it as anything unusual. As I said before, I'm representing people accused of far worse crimes. I've represented people accused of being part of Al-Qaeda, of ISIS. So representing Hamas, a political party in the Middle East, it's not that dangerous. It doesn't require much courage. I get it. I get why people might say that because of the political climate. But for me, it's just a normal case. It's a client who contacted me, who asked about this issue about deproscription. I was advising about it. I was, instructed to bring an application. So I did it. That's what lawyers do. We don't think too deeply about these issues. Did I anticipate that there might be some political, sort of pressure coming as a result, the death threats? Yeah, it did cross my mind, but I'll be honest, I didn't anticipate that the British state would implement counter-terrorism measures against me.
Right.
I expected the Schedule 7. I expected public pressure, expected the, fanatical Zionist lobby to be on my case, some media smears. I expected that. That sort of comes with the territory. I didn't expect the British state to actually strip me of my status as a solicitor effectively and drag me in and target my phone to try to access those communications with my clients. That was unexpected. We're lawyers. If you have a problem with my client, we can have a robust discussion and debate in court, outside of court, in a public forum. Yeah. But not where you're detaining me and interrogating me specifically. They also asked me about Hamas, right? Knowing that they're my clients.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned the kind of criticism that you faced from politicians, from the media and what have you, in terms of deciding to make the decision to represent Hamas. I mean, how do you respond to those kind of criticisms that you are representing a prescribed group, etc.?
I mean, it's just ludicrous. If you think about it, we're lawyers. Lawyers represent all sorts of people accused of all sorts of horrific, abhorrent crimes. If people lose the right to be represented, then what are lawyers for? Are we just here for people who haven't committed crimes? Right. I mean, pedophiles, terrorists, murderers, rapists, they all have lawyers. War criminals have lawyers. Benjamin Netanyahu has got a legal team. Right. And he deserves a legal team. Everyone deserves a lawyer. It's a right to representation. If you take that away, then what is the difference between us and a police state? I mean, if you're telling me that people do not deserve representation, then where does that take us? And specifically with the deproscription application, just to be clear, Section 4 of the Terrorism Act was introduced to mitigate against the abuse of the prescription power. Yeah. What prescription does is it dehumanizes those people. As we discussed, you can't have a conversation about them. You can't say you support them. You can't have them speak at your platforms. All sorts of issues. They're completely sidelined from the conversation, erased from it. So Parliament recognised this as very draconian power that has no judicial prior oversight by the judiciary. So to mitigate against that, they said any group that's banned will have the right to make an application to the Home Secretary to be removed. And if that's dismissed, they can appeal to the court. So that's essentially what we're doing. Hamas isn't the first group to instruct lawyers to get them off this list. Many groups have done so. Dozens of groups have done so, some successfully. Those lawyers have not been attacked or targeted. Yeah. So why is there a difference now? I mean, why is Hamas being exceptionalized? Why is Palestinian solidarity being exceptionalized? It's part of that process where Israel and by connection Palestine are exceptionalized.
Yeah.
They're almost outside the law. You can't give them a voice.
Yeah. And I think one question I had for you as well is that some argue that these kind of counter-terrorism powers are necessary for public safety, for protecting the public from harms that could affect them, etc. From your perspective, what's the reality of how they are used today?
You know what? I felt really reassured that the police were arresting that 83-year-old vicar in Parliament Square.
Why?
I felt really reassured for my safety. And then the disabled paraplegic who's been dragged off by the police for holding up a cardboard sign. I felt so safe at home. I was really thankful to God that I'm living in a country that protects public safety in this way. It's the oldest trick in the book. The state will always say that it's there to protect. We need your civil liberties suspended to protect you. It's like giving a robber the key to your house, and he's fleecing your house while you think he's checking the locks. You know, it's ridiculous. The state, we have to move beyond the point where we think we're surrendering our civil liberties for temporary security. You're not going to get that. You're just going to lose your civil liberties and you're going to lose your security. People need to live in a free society. We're not living in a free society. We're living in a police state. And let's just recognize that the government is using sort of the carrot of public safety to dangling that in front of us in order to take away our civil liberties and move further and further towards this police state. Yeah. It's not happened in the last 2 years, Areeb. It's been happening for the last 25 years. You've seen it, many civil society organizations, people like Cage, they've been on the front lines of this. They've been warning against this for many years now.
I mean, especially in light of the prescription of Palestine Action, there's been a lot of conversation amongst human rights groups. I mean, even the UN have intervened at some point as well, in terms of the state of the legal system here in the UK. And especially in light of the rise of reform, they're doing very well in the polls at the minute. A very pertinent question that's come up, and I'd be very curious to hear your perspective as someone who practices the law here in the UK. Do you think the legal system here in the UK is still capable of protecting our human rights?
So there still are a number of very good independent judges who think independently and will be there to hold the government to account. But the manner in which the government continues, and successive governments, are browbeating the judiciary, pressuring them to make the correct decisions. People like the Shadow Justice Secretary are routinely naming and shaming immigration judges, for example, who allow appeals of people facing deportation. So all of that pressure is going to have an impact on the judiciary. I've got friends who are immigration judges who have said in words to that effect that we're afraid of making a decision that's the right decision.
But why is that a bad thing? Because surely that individual you just mentioned is practicing their freedom of speech, would be the argument.
No, these are politicians who are naming and shaming judges. We're living in a democracy, supposedly, where there's a separation of powers, where you've got the executive and you've got the judiciary.
Yeah.
The executive should not be putting any pressure on an independent judiciary. That's not meant to happen. The judiciary is meant to be independent of the executive. So when the judiciary allows a family from Gaza, allows their appeal to be allowed to enter the UK, and you have Keir Starmer and the opposition leader, both of them, not even disagreeing, both of them agreeing that this was a wrong decision and they're going to be appealing it and saying that in Parliament. What message is that sending to judiciary? I mean, there's a process. If you want to appeal, go and appeal. But why are you publicising that in Parliament? Why is everyone talking about these judges? And these judges feel the pressure. Judges should be independent. They should not feel pressure from the state about how they should be implementing the law. Their job is to rule on the law, to hold the government to account if it's breaching the law.
Right.
But if they feel intimidated by the government, being called enemies of the people and what have you, then that is going to have a chilling effect on their freedom to actually rule in accordance with the law.
Yeah. And I think looking ahead, what do you see as the most kind of urgent legal and political struggles in this area?
For me, I think the urgency is to dismantle the architecture of repression in this country when it comes to national security.
Right.
And everything that flows from that, and that is the Terrorism Act 2000. That is the fundamental problem in this country, which everything else that we've talked about, Schedule 7, the Palestine action, the abuse of prescription powers, it all flows from the Terrorism Act 2000. There's no need for it. It's superfluous to the country's needs. There's a perfectly capable and competent criminal justice system which can investigate and prosecute all of those sort of actions that are come under the guise of terrorism, without the need to escalate it by calling it terrorism. One of the former independent reviewers of counter-terrorism in this country, he was of that opinion that we need to get rid of it. We don't need these terrorism powers.
Interesting.
He didn't last very long in the job, but the point being is that this debate has to take place.
Yeah.
Tackling Schedule 7 in isolation, or certain parts of Schedule 7 in isolation, is not dealing with the root cause. We're dealing with symptoms.
Yeah.
Winning the Palestine Action judicial review is tackling a symptom.
Right.
Do
you feel Britain is ready, though, to kind of have that conversation, to kind of even contemplate the very idea of repealing Terrorism Act, given the fact that we're talking about 2 decades of the war on terror, conditioning of a society to effectively accept these things as norms? Because I don't remember a time when Schedule 7 wasn't a thing, for example.
Yeah, so I mean, what you've just said there is you phrased it quite well. The conditioning a society. That's exactly what's been happening.
Yeah.
It's conditioning a society to accept this. And what we're seeing now is, as the power is being implemented in a wider sense against Palestine action, you see to the wider British white society coming out and saying, well, hold on, what, this is incredible. And they call it a misuse or an abuse of terrorism powers. And that's, I don't like that phraseology. I think this is exactly what terrorism powers and terrorism laws were intended to do.
Right.
If they go unchecked, we have to actually say, look, this is completely wrong, it should be dismantled. And as the state continues to, mission creep and starts using terrorism powers against wider society, there will be pushback. Already, the fact that of the 1,500 protesters who deliberately went out to break the law on holding up those placards, I support Palestine action, they were only able to arrest 850 of them, approximately. It means that almost half of them got away scot-free by committing a terrorism offence.
Right.
There's more scheduled. I mean, it's going to come to a point where the law becomes broken. It becomes ridiculous. How can you, even the people you arrest, how will you process them? How will you charge them? And I think the state has just, pushed it too far now.
Do you think the actions of Palestine Action could potentially break the legal system here in the UK?
The actions of Palestine Action, or the actions of those protesting
of the individuals who have been sitting down in Parliament Square, for example, with those signs that say "I support Palestine Action," and being arrested en masse? Most
definitely. I mean, look, people can see it for what it is. Britain is being ashamed on the global scene. Everyone can see it. They're like, how are you arresting all these elderly people? The police are uncomfortable doing what they're doing. We're going to get to a point where police officers are going to refrain from arresting people.
Really?
I feel so. These police officers did not sign up for this. When they hear about terrorism, they have a very different image in their head of what they signed up for.
Right.
They didn't sign up to the police to fight terrorism and then be dragging people in wheelchairs, for holding up cardboard signs. I mean, really, you can see it on their faces. They do not want to be there. And I think we're going to reach a point where basically there'll be, resistance from the police to following these orders.
Interesting. And I think on a final note, what message would you want to give to communities who feel silenced or intimidated, but still want to kind of stand up for kind of things like justice and human rights?
Yeah. Don't be silenced. Your voice is your power. They try to silence your voice because it's effective. And I think what you need to do is escalate. If we're learning anything from Gaza, it's this. Those who are on the wrong side of history, the people supporting genocide, the people aligning themselves with the Israeli state, are escalating their efforts to erase Gaza and to eviscerate anybody wishing to stand with those in Gaza. On the other side of that equation, we see the people in Gaza and their resilience, their resistance at every level, and their courage. And there's no fence to sit on anymore. You're either going to be with those who are oppressing them or those who are standing in that concentration camp. So as my colleague Frank McGuinness has said, you're either with the concentration camp guards or with those in the concentration camp. If you're with those in the concentration camp, expect to be attacked because you're effective. You are their voice in this country and you need to carry on being their voice. Expect repression, expect isolation, expect to be targeted, but also draw your inspiration and courage from those people. We are on the right side of history. We will be victorious in this. Palestine will be free. And a time will come, as the famous book says, when everybody will say they were against this. They weren't. You were. And be proud of that.
Fahad Ansari, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.